Hello and welcome to another edition of the Rjr News Forum. I'm Rjr Moxam. With me from the newsroom is Kalisha Williams. Today we are pleased to welcome a team from the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation. And I have, starting to my immediate left, is His Worship the Mayor and the Chairman of the Corporation, Senator Delroy Williams. Then beside him is Councillor Dwayne Smith of the Chancery Hall Division. Beside Councillor Smith is Councillor Kari Douglas, and she is from the Trafalgar Division. And I think you're also representing the minority leader in the corporation, Councillor Andrew Swaby, because we want to hear from both sides in terms of the political parties represented in the council or in the corporation. And beside her is Mr. Robert Hill, the CEO of the KSAMC, the Kingston St. Andrew Municipal Corporation. So I want to thank you all for being with us today. There's quite a bit that we are interested in learning from the KSAMC in respect of its ongoing work. There are interesting times, or these are interesting times for the Kingston Metropolitan Region, which is seeing a spurt in road projects and other infrastructural works, and impressive buildings are going up as well. A subset of the transformation process is what is happening in downtown Kingston in particular. So we'll be taking a look at some of what is happening there with the construction of new buildings, restoration of some old ones, and beyond the block and steel component, how the people are being incorporated in the process. We'll then also take a look at some of the public order issues affecting other sections of the corporate area. So quite a bit to chew on today. But Mayor, I'm going to start with you and ask you to sort of share with us the vision and the mission for the KSAMC.
Well, the vision is encapsulated in a term that we use very often. It's to make Kingston the pearl of the Antilles, the capital city of the Caribbean Sea. We refer to it also as the light of the Caribbean, and a major player as a city on the Latin American and Caribbean landscape. So that is the vision. That would involve making Kingston a prosperous, economically viable city, which requires some amount of infrastructural work to modernize our infrastructure, to put in new infrastructure where needed. We are seeing, in terms of the physical infrastructure, a lot of that taking place across the municipality. So we are developing and improving the physical infrastructure. We believe that that is foundational to the economic strength of the city. And when we say, it's not done just by the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation. So when we say we are just speaking of government and this total approach in terms of government. So there has to be, we have said, a synergy, a kind of seamless coordination between agencies of government and to make one government in terms of one approach. So the central government has basically been leading in terms of a lot of the physical infrastructural development in the city, which has been helping us. Also, we tend from the municipal corporation not to look at the port facilities, but for us it is critical also to developing a strong economy within the city, a strong Kingston. And there are many achievements at that level. I know the Kingston Wharves has indicated, and I believe is very committed to it, to making Kingston the automobile logistics center for the region. That is important. Also, we have seen the concluding of this concession agreement with CMA, CGM, and in that the company is assuming operational responsibility for the Kingston Container Terminal. And also part of that is to make large investments in terms of making the terminal a modern world-class terminal. And that is important. So if you look at the access channel and the Kingston Harbour Basin, the dredging taking place there is opening up the terminal to be, what does that mean now is that we can cater for for the largest vessels traversing the Panama Canal.
Well, I'm going to ask you to pause there because we're going to come back to you and delve into some of these issues more deeply. And let me go to Councillor Douglas and ask you, I am assuming that in order for success to be achieved, that there has to be some level of consensus, even when you argue around the margins about some of the particular issues. But what is can you share with us the extent to which there's consensus between the majority side and the minority side in the corporation on some of these issues?
I think that generally on the side of the minority, we support the government's effort, both at central and within the municipal corporation, which is local government, to start to improve our physical infrastructure, to expand our physical infrastructure, especially across the municipality. I don't think that there have been many issues where that is concerned. I believe, however, that our focus has been to ensure that the elements within council especially that have the responsibility for enforcement specifically and for putting in place policy that deals with the vision for Kingston and St. Andrew, that all of that is done in a way that is progressive and harmonious for various groups within the city. Not just the business or executive group, not just the political directorate, but also, as you mentioned earlier, to incorporate in a way where it will impact them positively, the people of the city. And if you look specifically at downtown Kingston, I'm not sure if you're ready to go into that now, to delve into it now, but there are obviously a lot of areas and elements for social transformation and physical transformation when you consider the urban blight and the social blight of some of these communities. So in terms of physical infrastructure, absolutely. I think we're very supportive of that. But there is still the need for effective legislative reform, especially from central government, to aid some of the development that is taking place. Also, efficient urban management, comprehensive urban management from the standpoint of the council, which is where we sit, which is our responsibility as a political directorate to lead the vision where the technocrats are concerned. And then, of course, for enforcement, which is perhaps the most important, because once you start to implement policy and reform the legislative framework, then there comes the point of enforcement, which if your laws aren't being enforced, then it absolutely makes no sense.
Yes. Well, you mentioned some of the technical and enforcement issues, and I'm going to go to Mr. Hill to ask you whether you have at your disposal at the moment the tools, technically, or the resources to do some of what needs to be done, because even as you monitor some of what is being done outside of your jurisdiction in terms of some of what central government is doing, you have a responsibility in respect of planning approvals to make sure that some developments, there's a certain level of complementarity between what somebody else might want to do and what you need to do within the corporation. So share with us some of what your challenges might be, whether you're comfortable with the role you're being able to play at the moment, or if not, let us know.
Well, certainly, I want to echo the sentiments already expressed by His Worship the Mayor and, of course, Councillor Douglas. And you will agree that resources are never enough for supporting implementation of cutting-edge and innovative policies that we are putting forward. We are in a situation now where the pace of development that we are seeing and the applications that are coming and the innovations that people want to bring forward have never been done or have not been done in several years.
But are you in danger of being overwhelmed by that pace?
I wouldn't say no, because Mayor rightly spoke to the complementarity and the seamless coordination between agencies, which we have indeed improved within the last few months, let's say over the past 2 years, for example, because we have an emerging development order which speaks to roles, responsibilities, timelines, and deliverables. When it comes on to the Amanda system that allows us to fast-track the approvals process and how agencies view their own assessment of what they need to do and to get back in within a specific time frame. It behooves us now to move more efficiently. We're looking at a situation also where there is a multiplicity of applications coming for various types, whether residential, commercial, or areas that are being now impacted by applications for mixed-use development and so forth. So we're looking at those issues. There are legislative issues that we need to settle. As it relates to the resources, we continue to build out as much as we can based on budgetary constraints and the requirements of policy. But I'm glad that both our leaders mentioned the issue of public order and enforcement. We have to, at the base of everything we do at the corporation, and of course I speak for the local authorities, is to measure impact and also ensure that there is a higher level of compliance, right? We have one of our major difficulties, as with change in policy, is going to be that issue of pushback and non-conformity and a sort of resistance to the development. And we're trying to, through various means, including community and social media interaction, to bring our citizens on board and to ensure that the knowledge is shared and ensure that there is common understanding in the direction that we're trying to take Kingston and St. Andrew.
Okay. Before I get back to the mayor, let me go to you, Councillor Smith, and ask you, are there any particular areas of this exciting period for the city and the corporation that you want to focus on?
Funny you ask that question. What my new passion is, and I've been discussing with the mayor and the town clerk and my caucus, is that the Kingston and St. Andrew, in my opinion, corporation, Kingston and St. Andrew on a whole, need to start to incorporate much more renewables in the planning. Earlier this year, with the support of the opposition, unanimous support, I moved a resolution where I thought it's time that the government of Jamaica incentivize developers to use renewables. Last week we heard the Prime Minister speak of wanting renewables to be 50% of the energy mix by 2030, and we're on the same page. I believe that with all building now, we should incorporate renewables. And what I mentioned specifically in my resolution was that the government of the day should try and find a way to incentivize persons to do renewables in their home for solar panels, etc., etc. Now, as recent as yesterday, with the blessing of His Worship the Mayor, I went on a tour of a renewable solar parking garage over at CMU, a place that is doing remarkable work, remarkable work, because we want to replicate what we have seen over there over the parish council with our parking garage and even get some panels on the roof. Went over there to see how it was done, the costs, the savings, etc. And I'll be bringing my report to His Worship the Mayor and the CEO and see how we can get some external funding. Because if we're talking about renewables, we need to start right at our home. And we want to replicate this situation across other municipal corporations. We need to start saving, because although in essence Jamaica is not really a big emitter of fossil fuels, not in the grand scale of things, we are susceptible to natural disaster. We are right there, so we feel it the most. So I'm trying to get the KSAC to be greener, more energy efficient. I don't want to upset my colleague here.
I don't think there's any danger there.
No.
But that is my focus right now,
Yes.
to get the parish council much more energy efficient.
Kelisha?
My question is to Mr. Hill. You mentioned that there's a level of non-compliance across the board, not only in Kingston, but across the corporate area. What are some of the challenges, or feedback rather, are you getting from the people inside some of these communities in terms of the restoration plan for Kingston?
Well, we are part of the larger development process, a major player in the development process. And what we see happening there, as the data would suggest, and I know the mayor continues to echo the fact that within the next 30 to 40 years, about 80% of residents will be living in cities. And so there's going to be a reversal of what we would now term as the emptying out of the countryside, or the cities into to what we now have as dense areas and populations where persons are going to be residing, working, living, etc. On top of that, we're looking at still the 2030 vision, and how do we work out those components and see how best we now serve our citizens based on the current and future policy positions that we're trying to put forward. So now, in terms of the non-compliance, there are various areas of non-compliance. We have to contain the issues related to garbage disposal, issues related to illegal dumping, illegal garages, illegal vending, other activities that are taking place within residential areas that ought not to happen, including and not limited to unapproved structures that are going up all over the place.
But sorry, should some of those you mentioned,
Yes.
let me go back to the mayor. Some of those should be the low-hanging fruits in terms of the illegal or improper disposal of garbage on the streets, for example, even before you get to the gullies. You see somebody walking down the street and just tossing their garbage, the packaging that they were eating from, onto the sidewalk. I don't sufficiently see any punitive action being taken or corrective action being taken. You speak of, vending on the street sometimes, not just are the sidewalks taken over completely. In some instances, there's encroachment on the streets. If you can't respond to those that are immediately before you, we have a problem.
I would say so far, right, so behavioral changes, behavioral transformation is not as easy as, we know it's difficult. So take the issue of the improper disposal of garbage, which is a major issue, and there is somewhat an intensifying of it. The illegal disposal of garbage, well, improper, but people are now developing their own garbage disposal sites, and it's mainly along the major thoroughfare on main roads. We have been taking some actions towards it. So at the council, we passed a resolution dealing with that in terms of increasing the fines and making the fines onerous, burdensome, and along with other measures, which we have sent on to the parent ministry, the Ministry of Local Government.
So how large is your cadre of enforcement officers, your municipal police?
It's approximately 30 now, and there are efforts to increase it. But on the issue of garbage collection, there are we believe that we can deal with it with a two-pronged approach. One, to have dialogue. So this Tuesday, we're having a town hall meeting in Rjr Town, where we are having some issues with garbage disposal along the lower South Camp Road, Windward Road, not Windward Road, East Queen Street, and sections of Arbor Street. We are going there with a town hall meeting to sensitize the residents in terms of the impact on the cleanliness of the city. We have been pursuing the issue of safety cameras, and we have been building out a command center with the help of the NAA at the municipal corporation to monitor in real time what is happening. Key to this is the issue of the improper disposal of garbage. So we will be putting cameras where in key locations across the city, in urban centers, and in locations where we're having this challenge. And the intention is for it to act as a deterrent, but to prosecute where necessary. So we believe the cameras will not only serve in terms of improper disposal of garbage, the cameras will lend to a far more efficient use of the resources we have at the municipal corporation with respect to other issues like vending and so forth. But
pause there. Let me just see if we can flesh out the question of how you then follow up with the prosecution. You capture somebody disposing garbage from a vehicle. You capture the registration details. You are able to therefore presumably track who the owner of the vehicle is. So even if that's not the person driving at the particular moment, you have that connection to make. are you promising that you'll be able, therefore, to make that link, and therefore you're able to follow up and do the prosecution quickly?
Well, so one, so the issue of deterrent, because persons know that they are being watched and seen.
Yes,
That is
I'm
itself a
assuming,
deterrent.
I'm assuming that some of them will ignore that.
Yes,
So when those...
and you have to assume that.
Yes.
And so the issue of prosecution will come in. There has to be some legislative changes which would have to come in order to...
You mean we can't prosecute under current conditions, right now, legislative conditions?
Yes, it
we-
can, but it's not as
It's not as easy and as smooth.
or as stringent as we want it to be.
Yeah,
So some
that's
changes have to be
some
made.
changes.
Has to be made.
But those efforts will be made. And yes, so the intention is to follow up, build the evidence. And it might be a case where we observe something, but instead of just acting on the initial observation, we now begin to target what is taking place and then gather more evidence. Because I'm going to be very frank. The issue of businesses, and I'm using the term businesses loosely now, of businesses downtown disposing of the garbage that they have in an improper manner. That is a big issue in the downtown area. And we have appealed to the businesses over and over to desist from this. And we know that it's taking place. So the signal would be very clear. We would also be observing this activity among business owners and store owners downtown. A small set, but the impact is great in the downtown area in terms of the garbage.
Yes. Councillor Douglas, I think you also spoke of legislative changes. Apart from the NSWMA Act, is there any other piece of legislation, maybe specific to the corporation, that you think needs to be strengthened?
In the area of planning, certainly the Town and Country Planning Act, which is being revised, that has been underway for a few years, still not complete. There are other acts, I believe, that may not necessarily deal with administration and city management, but other elements of planning and housing development, the Local Improvements Act, the Housing Act, more on the side of central government. But this legislation and these changes and reforms will impact largely and widely our duty and our responsibility as a council to manage effectively the city and the various elements and components that will cause our city to be progressive and that will eliminate some of the nuisances that are caused by all of the inadequacies that the mayor just spoke to.
Mm-hmm. Could I get, all right. So there are many urban challenges confronting cities. And as the town clerk has said, it's forecasted that approximately 90%, well, over 90% of persons will live in urban centers over the next 30 to 50 years. So we have to plan and design our city, the city of Kingston, in a way to meet those challenges. So it's important in terms of planning, proper planning. We have to have planned development within the city. The issue of urban mobility is going to become more and more an issue that we have to pay attention to. Why not pay attention now and save succeeding generations? So we have to deal with all the issues, residential densities, the building heights. Those issues we have to have serious scholarly discussions around to resolve the issue of residents. I know the government is strong on it, and the government has been looking at it and has asked all the agencies to look at it. But these are issues that require proper scholarly discussions to resolve them and to ensure that we have proper planning. Look at the downtown area. I know I'm going a little long, but look at the downtown area.
And I'm going to go again after you.
We are, let's deal with the issue of housing, which for me is a major issue. Even if you're dealing with health security, you can't speak about pandemic preparation or health security without dealing with the issue of proper planning for housing, without dealing with the issue of squatter settlement.
Public sanitary conveniences.
Let me challenge you on one thing, though.
Okay.
Even after you have done all that you desire to do, all that you can reasonably do, after you have changed all the ordinances to facilitate 20-story buildings, etc., and even after you have done the necessary adjustments in terms of carrying capacity, sewage-wise and utilities-wise, etc. Isn't there the danger of overcapacity for the capital city, and therefore, should you not be coordinating with the other municipal corporations and with central government to make sure that you do not depopulate some other sections of the island, so you then have an overbalance in terms of population and services in the country? So even as you look to the adequate development of Kingston and St. Andrew, you don't want it to become so overridden by some of the same attendant social problems.
And notice why I said scholarly discussion.
Yes.
Because that is important. So there are dangers lurking everywhere when you're dealing with development. So it's not development for development's sake. You have to look at the dangers. Because even developing the downtown Kingston, it has to be well planned, because you can develop downtown and then in a matter of 10, 20 years, it's back to where it was. But planned development, taking in consideration all the dangers, taking in consideration even the potential for major price increases in terms of property value downtown, those are dangers that you have to deal with. The issue of mixing the housing solutions that you have in the downtown area, a mixture of middle-income housing, low-income housing, high-end housing. Those are issues that you really have to look at and plan in a proper way so that you sustain, you make your city, one, livable, resilient, but you sustain the development that you have within your city over a long period of time.
Go back to Councillor Smith and then...
Well, I wanted to just start briefly. You mentioned the garbage situation and the disorderly situation in the city. And His Worship the Mayor and the Town Clerk spoke to a town hall that is planned for this shortly. And that's where we begin, by going back into the communities, having public education campaigns and reminding the people, the residents, of what not to do. Also, the Mayor also spoke about the potential increase in our enforcement team, and that is aided and abetted with the new the public safety and security arm of the JCF. That team with those beautiful bikes and bicycles, right? They have helped tremendously in bringing the city back into order.
Lime green bikes?
It is high, we call it.
This is beginning to sound like a third form class.
No. What I'm saying is high visibility, bikes and bicycles. They're helping with the order of the city and getting robberies down. They have really helped the city. Yes. And I think with the constant public education of garbage disposal, and the mayor and his team continuing to go into communities and have these public forums, it will help over time with the garbage situation in the city.
Just go back to Councillor Douglas and then go to you, Dasha.
I just wanted to add to what the mayor said by saying that a big part of moving forward and improving on what presently exists is looking at our national physical plan, which is in urgent need of revision. The last national physical plan must have been written and produced back in the 70s. Also, to look at local sustainable development plans for every single division within our municipality and, of course, across the nation on a national level, so that we will be better able to coordinate these high-density, over-intensive developments with supporting facilities, supporting services, of course, and amenities that will create a more comfortable environment for some of our citizenry. Also, to look at specific elements within these plans, to look at our main arterial roads, to look at our nodal points, to look at special services that are offered within these areas, to look at something as simple as pedestrian crossings, you know?
That's not simple. Major issue.
Major issue, but we tend to simplify it, which is why I've described it as that.
Yes.
When I look at some of the areas within the Trafalgar Division, for example, Golden Triangle, which we have finally come up with a way to establish a team that will actually be writing their own local sustainable development plan for that area.
Something that is not sustainable up there, though, is that abandoned townhouse complex that was abandoned. I suppose the corporation intervened about 20 years ago. How is that going to remain there, just below Vale
I
Royal and
looked at
across
that
from
building
that new
2
building?
days ago, and I
Yes.
thought to myself, the government will have to intervene. Again, legislative reform. Unfortunately, I know that the Minister of Housing, I believe under the Housing Act, has the power to declare areas for improvement, slum improvement, for example. And I wonder if such an area could fall under that act, under his jurisdiction. It poses a serious public health hazard. Recently, I had to get the mayor and the CEO to intervene to provide us with a team of persons in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and our city inspector to have that place cleaned thoroughly, because there were rodents and there were issues, public health issues, that was affecting neighboring basic schools and nurseries with young children. So clearly the government will have to intervene when it comes on to situations like that for properties that have been abandoned. And I think we do have the power by legislation to do so.
Dashan, quick.
As we talk about the redevelopment of the city of Kingston, but let me just digress a little bit to the parish itself, and looking at recent reports from the electoral office.
So the parish of Kingston.
The parish itself. Not the city, but the parish itself. Where in recent years, the ECJ was saying that because of the depopulation of the parish, they may have to resort to the minimum 2 constituencies. But now the latest report saying that, it is up, it's more now in northern St. Andrew, where we're seeing a little depopulation, and we have to do that. But in terms of the repopulation with the redevelopment of the downtown area in the parish itself and the inherent dangers of climate change, are those being taken into consideration, adaptation, mitigation? We had a newscast last week looking at it, and I got a video from one of Rjr Informatics showing that in just about 8 years, the parish could be underwater just from having 1 more meter rise in the sea level. Are those being taken into consideration with the redevelopment of the downtown area?
Can we go to the CEO in part for that? I think the UDC has plans for about 4 towers on the waterfront, which would be adding to the population down there. Very attractive looking, but the mitigation measures.
Yes, certainly. We have taken that into serious consideration. The fact that we are working with the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, you had already mentioned Mona Rjr Informatics. We actually looked at with the Port Authority of Jamaica and other agency partners, including NEPA, the return rate in terms of the higher sea levels that would more or less affect downtown Kingston going forward. On our own disaster coordinator has been continuously doing some studies on it. Actually, we have a team of volunteers, students that are working with her in particular nodal areas which are susceptible not only to flooding but various types of disasters, to look at how we inform planning and building and other infrastructure development in those areas. But we certainly are focused on a larger long-term mitigation program. We have activated our emergency shelters. We have done about 3 interventions now, Your Worship, with the shelter managers, not only speaking about hurricanes and floods, but how to prepare long in advance. What are the areas of...
For sea level rise?
Yes, for sea level rises, as well as the resultant flooding and cut off of roads or areas that people can easily traverse. But also to focus on how they plan ahead, not only for the next season of hurricanes or the next earthquake, which are obviously, thanks to God, we're not being necessarily gravely affected. And I'm not giving another question to ask. However, the fact is that we have to look at it as a broad-scale interagency movement to ensure that we are on the same page and that the citizenry and the policymakers and those of us charged with implementation are not working at cross purposes, that we recognize these geographic zones and we know what to do.
But I want to find out,
particularly and peculiarly based in certain areas that we know what to do.
Let me hear back from you and the mayor as to whether jurisdictionally you are being bullied by the UDC,
No, no, no,
or
no, no, no.
you are holding your ground where you need to hold your ground on certain things?
Oh,
Right, so I have said that the seamless coordination
Yes.
between agencies is critical to the proper development of the city of Kingston. We have seen that. We have seen great improvement in terms of the coordination, the dialogue between all the agencies, including the UDC. I would say that we have had a very frank and very good relationship with the Urban Development Corporation, and we believe that that will continue. But the same with the NAA, NEPA,
yes.
and all the agencies that play a NWC, that play a critical role, JCF, in the development of the city. So we are on the same page in terms of where we want the vision for Kingston, where we are taking it. The Prime Minister is very clear in terms of giving direction, and I believe that we all share in that vision and working together to attain that vision. The Building Act, just to deal with the issue of the resilience, the Building Act also, the new Building Act, also adds resilience to our infrastructure and the development of the city. For example, if you look at Florida, I believe it was Hurricane Andrew. It is said that if the new Florida code was in place, Florida would have saved Florida, I can't recall, but really,
Multiples of
yes,
billions.
millions of dollars. So the building code is important. What our new building code does, that it allows us to incorporate international codes within, to be part of the regulations. And we should do regulations with respect to the built environment. So that would go a far way in terms of making our city far more resilient. But you see, it's twofold. It's one, you prepare for disasters in terms of you can prevent certain occurrences in terms of your level of preparation. But also, you have to also be prepared for when disaster strikes in terms of, because that will happen. Yes, so you have to have also that kind of infrastructure. And we are saying that kind of infrastructure has to do a large part with the planning, with the types of housing solutions, the types of communities you build. We are saying communities that are far more interactive and allow for interaction, that Kingston, the municipality, should be looking more and more to designing communities that allow for connections, because those connections go a far way in terms of how you deal with a disaster when it strikes.
Okay, my question is for Mayor Williams. Going back to an earlier point, you mentioned the importance of housing, and you touched briefly on squatting, which is an issue which spans decades. How now in this redevelopment plan are you going to address the issue of squatting in downtown Kingston and capture settlements?
Well, I mean, you can't have any development plan for the municipality without dealing with the issue of squatting. And I mean, there are places where squatting taking place now, which we would have to, in a proper development plan, decide whether or not we can allow the squatting there, or whether or not.
What do you mean allow the squatting there?
Well, I don't know what I mean.
No, turn a blind eye.
I think you know what. No, there are efforts through the housing agency of Jamaica. There are efforts there to upgrade infrastructure. Yes, to regularize, to upgrade infrastructure. So where you can upgrade the infrastructure in certain areas that are affected by this practice, then I would say, and I think the Housing Agency of Jamaica has been doing that in terms of large investments in upgrading infrastructure. So that is one case in terms of dealing with a particular problem. And but the general planning of where you allow certain activities to take place, where you know with certain activities that you cannot allow, you have to have that development plan for the municipality so that we can far better plan and execute the plans.
In that plan, an eyesore on the waterfront, the Tower Street Adult Correctional Facility, does the plan include repurposing, removing, whatever, but using that. I sat with the folks at the Chinese embassy and the other day we were speaking,
I'll just quickly give you my personal
and they said
view
to
on
me,
that.
Dashan, imagine you have a beautiful harbor.
Yes.
And you've been in China. I was in China recently, and on rivers, they're making rivers into beautiful places. And they say, we wish we had something like that.
So my personal view on it, and I don't think that over time anyone in government would be able to defend it being there. My personal view, over the next 10 years, 10, 15 years, I don't see how we can.
This is not policy, but personal.
This is my personal view I'm giving it, which I will articulate, and hopefully one day it will become policy. But I'm sure senior members of the government must be looking at it. My personal view is it has to go, and it has to go, but timing is important.
I need an update on the restoration of the Ward Theatre, but I don't just want to hear about what's happening with upgrading and restoring Ward Theatre, but how it fits into the overall plan for usage and the restoration of North Parade and how it links in with the Bolivar facility there as well. So give us that update if you will.
All right, and then I'll allow the TC and others too. All right, so that entire area, so it's now planning for the central business district. So that entire area from Ward Theatre, which is North Parade, to south, across the St. William Grand Park, into South Parade, where you have the Kingston Parish Church, Ulmer's Car Park, and what we know as Parade, growing up and going to take bus. That entire space, the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation figure that space would best serve the residents of Kingston and St. Andrew by becoming a grand recreational space.
Explain.
Meaning that, let's just put it in concrete language and easy to understand. Meaning that I would remove the surface, remove the asphaltic surface, put in...
Be more specific.
Yes, all right. So one, we would want to remove the buses from there. And we have started
So
with no buses there. So there wouldn't be the bus bay there, which we believe is sorry JUTC, but a blight on the area. So we have started those discussions, and those discussions are ongoing to have the buses relocate so that we can transform the space into a recreational historical space. We believe, and so you're taking the entire space from Ward Theatre across there, it's really rich Kingston history. But it's not depicted in the space now. So we believe that there are significant moments in our history, events in our history that must come alive in the space. So we intend to put historical monuments to relive and our history there. We intend for the space to be a recreational space for our residents, where they can come into the space and enjoy the space.
So you're going to pedestrianize it?
Pedestrianize it.
That's a part of it.
That's a part of
when
it.
I say
But remember now that all of that is really working out with the agencies, with all the agencies and with government, so that we are on the same page. So the Ward Theatre development, the renovation of Ward Theatre has to fit into that context.
All right, how far have you reached with the renovation?
What I would say now, I would say that we intend to invite the media for a tour of the Ward Theatre in a few weeks.
By when will you have your first big event there?
It's next year. I don't see it happening before next year.
Next year?
And it's not early next year.
So by Independence?
Yes. That is weird. That would be a good target.
Am I putting words into your mouth, or are you
No,
realistic?
we keep changing because, look here, to be frank, when we started the Ward Theatre renovation, we were thinking of, when I went there, I just went there by chance. It's a property owned by the KSAMC, so we had a visit there. And when we saw it, we were like overwhelmed and said, no, you have to renovate. But, being amateurs and, we figured that it would cost some money, but we could do it, just simple renovation. I mean, when you get into it, then you realize that there are more to it. Now, you start to enjoy it also. And then you also start to come up with different ideas now because you're into it now. And you're saying, no, but we can make this far more, we can make it massive.
First class.
We can make it first class. So new ideas begin as you go along. Ideas that will benefit the residents of the municipality in the end. So the changing timelines is really a result of people having new ideas and other players coming in. We're inviting experts from elsewhere. They come in, they share an idea that we believe, look, we should take that on board. And in the end, for us, in the end, it's best we go to next year and do a really good job. So when we open the Ward Theatre, that when our residents come in, they can appreciate it. When our children and the young persons come in, they can say, look here, it was well worth it.
How much have you spent so far?
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like you're overrunning your budget.
The good thing about us is that that also has to do in terms of the longer timeline.
No, I know
we spend as we earn, as the funds become available.
Yes, I know central government allocated $32 million to you last year, I think, towards the project.
The Chase Fund made a significant contribution. Yes. Obviously, we'll need more from them, but we don't want to go back to Chase until we have invited them in and for them to look in terms of what we have done with the funds that they have allocated. The TEF also allocated some funds which we are using in terms of for the audio. And through the Ministry of Culture, the $32 million, I believe, and some of that was used in terms of the Labor Day project, but the significant portion of that will be used for acquiring the AC unit.
You still haven't said how much has been spent so far?
I really would have to think about it because it's how we are spending. So we spend as funds become available. And by becoming available, remember now we have our monthly revenues at the KSA.
But is there an overall master plan for its restoration, though?
Yes, okay. yes.
I'll just follow up on the Ward Theatre briefly. The renovation works are far advanced. And as the mayor just said, the timelines change because ideas change. But I think the mayor is now hell-bent that it has to be finished next year. Right. So I think they've already procured the air conditioning services, the seating, they've renovated the bathrooms, the changing rooms, the windows. So a significant amount of work has been done. And when the media goes and tours it within a month, you'll be impressed at where they've reached so far.
Let me take you beyond the confines of downtown Kingston for a while and ask you to explain what's happening in terms of public order in Papine, in Halfway Tree, of Constant Spring. I know that there's quite an issue in respect of the relocation of the market in Constant Spring, for example. What's going on in terms of public order in those locations?
Well, it is quite evident that there is a higher pressure being placed on these critical urban centers where transportation follows vending or vending follows transportation, where persons are coalescing around termination points and so on, where vendors believe that, rightly or wrongly, that is where most of their benefit would come from. And it's a logical sequence to follow. Issue that comes out of that, again, is the high levels of garbage, the high levels of disorder, the improper disposal of waste from various areas, whether residential or businesses, the wanton loading and offloading of passengers in legal or illegal taxis. That's not for me to say here. But there is pressure on these points, and we have to continue to pay attention to them. We have been, with the support of the new unit coming out of JCF, traffic headed by SSP Allen and his team. We have partnered with them with our own enforcement team through the leadership of a seconded officer from the JCF who has more or less worked as a bridge between our enforcement team in terms of equipping them with the necessary knowledge, skills, know-how, as well as following orders and directives from JCF. So I actually detailed with JCF every morning before they go out on particular operations.
May I ask you to focus for a moment on Papine?
Yes.
It is a critical location because of the presence of the two universities and other educational institutions, etc. Lots of students come in from the countryside and are boarding up there.
Yes.
You have the problem with the market that was recently damaged by a fire. And just below that, you have issues related to Mona Commons as well. Does it need special and peculiar attention? There was even talk of making it a university town where, where the corporation perhaps could have some expert input from the educational institutions. So it could almost become a model for how you reassert order in a particular location.
Can I say that His Worship the Mayor has been passionate about that particular space? Not only because we had to react and deal with the fire at Constitution Market, but it, as I said before,
Papine
has been an issue. Sorry, Papine Market. It has been an issue as it relates to how we coalesce around the area of termination in Papine Square. The Ministry of Culture, along with us, had already declared the Blue and Jonquil Mountains as under UNESCO designation. The point at which it was declared was at Papine Park, right? We look at the growing interest not only around UTEC, UWI, the Theological College, the hospital, which of course is coming into greater demand, but also just up the road, the Heart Training Institute, that has been taking in even more, and also mine, the government training institution, that has taken even more responsibility for training and development and equipping persons. So we have a greater population and a greater squeeze in Papine Square. We do agree with the notion of and concept of a university town. And we know that we'd want to, like Parade, to start looking at probably pedestrianizing that area as well, Your Worship. So you have a walking town center, pretty much that which is done in so-called advanced societies.
Is that practical though? How do you get up to Garden Town?
Those are issues that we need to work on, because there is really literally just one road heading into Garden Town. So how do we manage that space? And it is manageable. We require certainly the intervention of expertise, certainly in transportation and people movement. We require expertise in terms of safety, security, and public order, which we have responsibility for and still expanding. But I believe it can be a shared modality that can allow for both vehicular and pedestrian traffic to move easier in that space.
That's right.
All right, two quick questions about pedestrianization, pedestrianizing parts of the city. Are there plans, like in some metropolitan areas around the world, to pedestrianize sections of cities on particular days? Like some places on Sundays, you can't drive a car into the center of the city and stuff like that. But apart from that, what are the plans for the cemeteries in the corporation in terms of maintaining or developing?
All right. You may wanted to talk about the pedestrians.
Cemeteries.
No, I'll do the cemeteries.
Okay, fine.
Yes,
okay,
I know that you're...
Pedestrianized. All right.
Passion.
So we have been speaking about pedestrianized.
Mayor, just one. I know, like in some cities, you can't drive a car into certain areas on a particular day, mostly like on a Sunday.
The city of London, I believe, does that.
We have 5 minutes.
All right, so our concept quickly is for King Street. We believe that we can pedestrianize King Street. When we were in Mexico, we saw it in operation. There are some store owners who are a little concerned about the pedestrianization along King Street. That it would be from Ocean Boulevard to South Parade, not the entire King Street beyond South Parade. Our studies show that commercial activity increased over 400% on these when you pedestrianize. It is perfect because it would fit into our concept of the entire area from Ward Theatre to South Parade. So that's the idea. Because we have been getting some resistance, mainly from the store owners along King Street, not all, but some, and we have to take that in consideration because they're part of the dialogue. We have asked our planners to look at phasing the pedestrianization and to begin those discussions. So we would take it from Ocean Boulevard to Port Royal Street as a first phase, just for the store owners to see how a pedestrianized street operates. And so we we need pedestrianized streets to transform the city and to add color. I'm just saying color to the city, and to make the city diverse and interesting. And how we go about it is what is the challenge is really we have to have the dialogue and to get past the hurdles, and that's the stage we are in now. But King Street, we are also looking at Bedford Street, but Bedford Street in a different way, because we're looking at Bedford Street as a pedestrianized vending street. It's not the same for King Street. King Street is a pedestrianized street. We would not allow vending on King Street. But for Bedford Street, we would.
I see the art walk is becoming a very important thing.
Brilliant. But we want to commend them for...
But the upgrade of the sidewalks as well, very important.
Very important.
And to take disabled people into consideration.
So that's what we're talking about, so the entire space.
Yes.
In terms of the King Street, the pedestrianization would remove the sidewalks. So you would have, everything would be one, the entire surface would be one entering into the store. So you wouldn't have this step up onto a sidewalk.
About flooding.
I was going to raise
Those
that.
are the issues, but those are issues for our engineers, and they have been looking at it. Even the Bedford Street, they have been working on Bedford Street. They have been looking at the issue of drainage and the movement of floodwaters. So we wouldn't ignore those. The sidewalks are in terms of the parade area, from Ward Theatre to South Parade, we have been looking at those. We will begin some redevelopment work along the sidewalks in that area pretty soon, as just to look at it and test it.
Final response on
Yes,
the
in terms of cemeteries, you know, we have a cultural norm in Jamaica that funerals are now almost like public holidays, particularly on weekends. And there is traffic management also to manage in terms of how we people, you know, get to the cemeteries. We have our major cemetery, the Maypen Cemetery is one of the largest cemeteries in the Western Hemisphere. And we still have a lot of space there. We have a lot of work to do on it. We're going to be revising an existing project document that we have to discuss with His Worship the Mayor to see how best we can now look at varying options that are used for public cemeteries across the world and look at best practices. We want to perhaps put in a columbarium, seating, gazebos, and so on. Cemeteries naturally are looked at as services and not revenue-generating entities. We now have to look at it as both revenue-generating and a provision of service to our citizens.
But if properly upgraded, you
Yes.
could have walking tours there. There are famous persons buried there.
Absolutely. That was my next point, Earl, because famous and infamous persons are buried at Maypen Cemetery. And it is a point of attraction that persons want to go and view these burial sites and take pictures. I hope the photos come out with only them in the photograph, but that is for them to figure out. But the fact is that it is an attraction that is good. Yes. What? Well, I think TVJ carried some stories some years ago about somebody appearing.
It was done.
It's Dovecot. But the fact of the matter is, it's a space that is gaining interest and attraction, and we want to put in a more modern facility with walkways, with seating, where persons can sit, meditate, visit, and also to continue with the sort of historical context that persons are gaining interest in as well. So we'd want to look at that.
Perhaps early next year we might have to do a part 2. We have run out of time and there's so much more that we could have discussed today. But I want to thank the members of the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation for being with us here today. The Mayor, Senator Delroy Williams, Councillor Carrie Douglas, Councillor Dwayne Smith, and the CEO, Mr. Robert Hill. I want to thank my colleagues from the newsroom, Kelisha Williams, and of course, Dashan Hendricks sneaked in after we had started, so I want to thank him as well for his contribution. I'm Rjr Moxam. Have a good day.